to deal with the new challenges we are facing. No regional organization can solve this problem, at least no Western regional organization. Partnerships is the one instrument that NATO right now can afford in order to provide collective security. It doesn't cost very much, everybody gets engaged, it's well accepted, it's different than enlargement, which is not accepted, at least not by the Russians.
With security and with a comprehensive concept and civilian forces to build security, those things can oftentimes create far more security than a bomber wing or a panzer division.
The other positive aspect about partnership, I think, is really preventive engagement. It's not preemptive engagement. It's preventive engagement that means employing long-term instruments in order to prevent crises, in order to avoid to have to manage crisis or even resolve crisis.
The events that have transpired in the Middle East in the year 2011, certainly Afghanistan is obviously one major theme, but the other increasingly are those countries engaged in the Mediterranean dialogue and the Istanbul initiative, that these countries are going to need help as well. And that the model or the example of cooperation and partnership that began in the early 1990s in Central and Eastern Europe, ideally, seems to me, needs to be further extended. The Egyptian military as a political force, as a force for the promotion of a stable order in Egypt, is going to need help not simply from the United States, but from many, many NATO countries and EU countries, and that will also apply in other countries.
When you look into partnerships for NATO, you cannot only look towards other countries. You have to look towards institutions too. And there is the UN, of course, and there is the European Union as multilateral institutions NATO look towards. On the ground, at the operational level, at the non-political level, the partnership between the EU and NATO works quite well. That has been shown on the Balkans. It's seen in Kosovo and everywhere where we go. Now, the EU provides civilian instruments. Look at the EU mission ULEX, which is a mission for jurisdiction building and all these kind of things. It works in parallel to KFOR.
In addition to NATO, there's also the German police training program. There's a European police and all that. There's also the role of the UN is playing. But now on the ground, you can see that they are willing to coordinate more.
We have been very much part with NATO of the Building Integrity Initiative, which has a number of aspects to it, but one of them is the training of officers who are on the ground, who are in the theater, to be able to deal with corruption.
If NATO wants to become a collective security provider, it has to acquire some civilian instruments, and that will cost a lot of money. Where should it get this money from beyond partnership?
You constantly are assigning a dollar or a euro value to defense, and peace and security have an absolutely incalculable value when it's gone. The major rationale with the treaty, based upon the failures of collective security and collective defense in the 1930s and the 1940s, was that by putting your efforts together, you would save money. And that's in Article 2 to promote democracy and free markets. So that is a very compelling argument.
NATO is a values-based organization. It's easy for us to take those kinds of values, which are common values across the world, and translate those into the Afghan National Security Forces.
NATO doesn't exist because it has an enemy. NATO exists because we share values, and because we share those values, we want to join together, right? That's what we teach our students, and I think that's still true. We need NATO because we need each other, and we're more secure together as opposed to apart.